Hello, happy hump day.
Hello, happy hump day, Tracy. How are you?
Good, really good. Tell me what I've
Yeah.
been doing since we last. What I've been doing, what I've been doing. I think I only done watch something at the cinema. I watched the Bob Marley movie. Have I talked about that?
No,
No.
no.
So I went to watch.
Is that like his life story? Or...
Yeah, Bob Marley, One Love, One Love. Let's call that.
Is that what it's called? One Love?
One Love, One Love. Because that's one of the songs, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I have to see that movie. So I went to see it with, oh my goodness.
It was like the person that I went with.
What? So
they know you're really good about themselves.
No, it's got to be Neil. It's got to be Neil. Because she's like my main cinema buddy.
When was
movie
this?
buddy.
Like the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, terrible. I'm so bad. I've just done so many things. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What? Anyway, so we went to watch it. And really, it was good. And what I thought they could have done better with this story, though. I mean, it just goes to show how much I did not know about his life. So I just thought, it's this great reggae music singer, quite famous. And I know I grew up listening to his music because my mum and my dad loved his music. And I thought he was assassinated. I had this thing in my head that he was assassinated. And he was like, an activist for peace and love, basically. So that was, and his music's really good. And then he had quite a few children, and Lauryn Hill married one of his sons.
Oh, yeah, I think I did know that.
Yeah, so, this is about as much as I knew about him. And then, so the story, it tells his story of his life from a young boy. I actually didn't know he was biracial, like his dad was a white Englishman.
Really?
Yeah, because Jamaica was like kind of like a colony, like India kind of thing. And so they had loads of plantations and they were owned by the white. Even the prime ministers were white, and they got their independence, the prime ministers were white. But anyway, so it was the son, but he wasn't acknowledged by his father. So he lived with his mother.
Illegitimate child.
Yeah, pretty much. So I didn't know any of that. And I guess he had a bit of wounding from that as well, like rejection.
Yeah.
No idea.
Done some Tracy coaching.
Could have some coaching. But, he became a Rastafarian, which is an actual religion. And I didn't remember doing that at high school because we were allowed to choose a religion to do a presentation on. I went to a Catholic school. I thought it was actually quite a good initiative. And we were allowed to pick any religion we wanted and to talk about it, like learn about it and talk about it. And I picked Rastafarian. I wanted to pick a religion that was as obscure as possible. And so I picked Rastafarian, actual religion. And the philosophy is quite beautiful. There's no me, there's no you. It's I. Like, it's I. Everything's I. I. I mean, there's no them and us. It's I. So you're not differentiating. Because the idea is when there's a you and a them, then there's always comparison and conflict. It's just I. Everyone's I.
Okay.
And anyway, and they smoked a lot of pot, pretty much smoked pot a lot. The point I was trying to make, going along, tell a long story, is they didn't talk about his final days because of actually what happened was he died of cancer, a very rare cancer.
Oh, really?
At the age of 35, 36.
Oh, that's so young.
Yeah. So
he achieved a lot then in a short space of time.
He died in 1984 or something.
Yeah.
But somebody did attempt to kill him. So there was.
Oh, that's where the assassination comes in.
Yeah. Somebody did he did get shot, but he was fine. And his girlfriend or partner, I don't know if they were actually married, got shot as well, like in the head. There's a few of them got shot at the same time. Wow. But they all survived. Amazingly. Wow. Yeah. Because they were doing
a girlfriend.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, don't ask.
Crazy.
So it was a really good story, but it only went up to this. They were doing a peace concert. There was a lot of trouble in Jamaica after they become really, really famous, like touring in America and around the world. And they came back and did a peace concert. And that's kind of where it ended. And we found out we'd just been diagnosed with cancer, but I think it could have just gone a bit further. Right. I'd explain more around, did he ever connect with his dad? Did he know who he was? or even his mother who'd left him in Jamaica to make a life in America. Like he didn't know anything about that. It was just,
Oh, so he's pretty much abandoned.
yeah. It was just about his philosophy of life and the music and how it evolved and where it started, which was beautiful. The music was great. And it was produced by Brad Pitt, which I didn't know until I watched it.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Brad Pitt was one of the producers. So I really loved the music. The acting was brilliant. I just thought it didn't go deep enough.
Deep enough. Yeah. Kind of left you hanging.
Yeah,
Maybe there'll be a part 2.
Yeah, maybe. I think it could have been more emotional, more emotive, deeper and emotional.
Right.
I think it was a little bit. It wasn't deep enough. It just could have been more, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So would you recommend it? Sounds like it.
I would just because the music. If you're not a fan of his music, I'm probably not.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a big thing in Australia somehow.
Don't think so.
No.
I suppose though, like the UK would have a bigger influence because there's that whole, like you said, it was a British colony. There's a lot of Jamaicans that came and lived in the UK, so that kind of that connection, isn't there?
Yeah, but it's big in Europe and America as well.
Yeah.
Not so much. Anyway, what about you? What are you up to?
What have I been up to? I've been working. Yeah. I know, actually. I've got a big hike out today in Cinque Terre. We're going to go to Rio Maggiore and Manarola and then go to afternoon aperitivo somewhere.
Lovely.
And no, actually, yeah, I've been working really hard because preparing for another trip away, another ski trip. So, yeah, just trying to get as much done before we go away on Sunday for that. So, we're going to go over to the Italian and French Alps this time, not the Swiss Alps. So, yeah. So,
living the high.
Well, yeah. So it's just me and hubby this time, but we might have a couple of friends join us because they have an apartment in that location, so they might come off for a day or two.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'm sure I'll see all the photos on Facebook and all. I'll be so jealous.
Yeah.
So good. Well, quite newsworthy in the last few weeks here has been the release of data on the gender pay gap in Australia.
Right.
Now, I mean, we all know globally, we know about this gender pay gap. It's well known. And, the idea is that there's lots of organizations that are making initiatives and doing things to tackle it. This is almost part of diversity, inclusion and equality is about that as well, side of it. So that's well known. But it was quite interesting because they've made it kind of mandatory, whereas it was optional before. And they've made it mandatory for companies with more than 250 employees to have to share this information, which they've done. And so this is the first time that they're kind of some people call it naming and shaming. I think so. I don't necessarily see it that way, but they're really calling out. It's really obvious now because of this, mandatory thing. So it's been all over the news. And I picked the story because in nearly every news source. So I picked the one from The Guardian, and it talks about, and the headline is, dozens of Australian businesses have gender pay gaps above 50%. And this is landmark data. And the story is written by Kate Langan. As data showing nearly 2/3 of workplaces have a pay gap that favours men is being published in the hopes of ending disparity. And the main things out of this article are the gender pay gap, where you can find out where your employer ranks. If you work for a company with more than 250 employees, an Australian company, it's quite interesting. So dozens of companies, have pay gaps of more than 50%. It's like, And this is work carried out by the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, which hasn't been active for very long, but we're glad it is. So over at nearly 5,000 businesses across Australia, every private company with 100 employers or more, were published on Tuesday with the explicit aim of attempting to reduce gender pay gap. The data paints a stark picture, with some of the country's biggest and most recognisable employers posting gender pay gaps of 30 to 40% in favour of male employees. So this publication comes after an amendment to a bill in 2023. The government passed the Workplace Gender Equality Amendment Bill in 2023. Now, if you want to just go Australia nationally, what's the figure? It's actually 19%. And then that's explained by saying that in the course of a year, the median salary a woman is paid is nearly 18,500 less than the median of what a man is paid. You want to put it in monetary terms.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. So 19%, 2023, because the data's come out of 2024. So 2023, Australia, 19% as a national, as a country. So I was looking at the UK, and that's 18%. No, not UK. US is 18% in 2022. Couldn't find any more data that's more recent. So that was the pay gap. And in the UK, the gender pay gap in 2023 was 14.3%. So it gives you an comparison.
Yeah. And has that been improving over time, Trace? Because I know that Australian data is new because it's only just become part of a legal requirement for the companies to do it there.
Yeah.
But in the UK, other parts of Europe and US, I know that these requirements have been
a while.
For a number of years. I think in the UK it's been for at least 4 years, I think.
Well, in the UK, the trend is the gaps closing for sure. Yeah.
That's good.
In the US, there's kind of been, it said it's been stagnant for a few years. It's not really shifting in the US, according to that information that I pulled. So that's interesting. But what it does say is since they started that initiative in the UK, it has made a difference because companies are aware and they're making a conscious effort, right? And it talks about how about 30% of employers have a neutral gender pay gap, which they're defining as a gap of 5% or lower. So I guess that's the target. If you were within the 5%, was calling it a neutral and okay, either way. And then there was 8.3% of the total that favoured women. So the gap was in favour of women.
Hey, want to work for those companies, don't we?
Well, this is the thing, do we? So when you break it down, though, it's quite interesting. So what they wanted to distinguish, and when I looked at the US sources of the same, something similar, is that it's not about equal pay. Equal pay for equal work has been the law in Australia for over 50 years. The gender pay gap is more than that because it looks at the median remuneration. So basically the middle pay number. So 50% of people are paid more, 50% are paid less. That's the number it's looking at in an organization. So if you have a lot of men who are highly paid and a lot of women who are in the lower paid areas, then the gender pay gap will reflect that by showing the differential between the two.
So an example would be like in a hospital, for example. You might have equal number of male and female doctors, but you probably predominantly have a lot more female nurses who are getting paid a lot less, right? So in that situation, the organisation would show a bigger gender pay gap with women being paid less, but that's because they're in roles that would traditionally be paid less.
Yeah, okay, exactly. And there's a lot of, you see that a lot of that happening. So you can see there's some explanations, but then there's some where there just isn't one, which that's quite interesting. So the worst offending were like insurance and finance and actually scientific and tech. and construction had the largest pay gap. So we said earlier that with the 19%, that meant that women were in 18,500 less. Construction industry is 38,500 less. Yeah. The 38 companies had gender pay gaps in favor of men of 50% or more. And the largest was Hunter Primary Care, health service provider in Newcastle, and their pay gap was 73% for the company.
Wow.
But they said this is their explanation, which is what we were just talking about, because they have a large number of highly paid male GPs who works an average of 1 4-hour shifts a month. Their salaries were annualized. So what happened? So to make it like more apples and apples, there'll be people working part-time, and like these GPs only working 4 hours a month, but they paid a lot of money. So what they do is they say, well, if they were full-time, what would they be getting paid an hour? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So everything's annualized to be able to calculate it. But it says when these employees were removed from the data set, the gap came down considerably. So it's these highly paid male GPs who don't work full.
Yes.
time.
There's some parts of the data that will skew the data. Make it kind of look a lot worse than what it is, or even better than what it is, depending on the situation. But to try and, like you say, make it like apples and apples, I've had to,
exactly,
explain some things.
So that the 27 countries with gaps of 50% or more in favor of women, there were 27 companies, but they were largely concentrated in healthcare, social assistance sectors, and disability support organizations. And then it just says employers in female-dominated industries have smaller pay gaps. So there's a lot of discussion about part-time, full-time, women-dominated industries, male-dominated industries, and around their explanations of the gaps.
Yeah.
But then there's also call-outs to specific companies, especially airlines and banks. So Alliance Airlines has a pay gap of 50%. Jetstar is 43.7%. Virgin's Australia is 41.7%. Cathay Pacific's about 40%, and Qantas is 37%. Qantas have the lowest pay gap, but all of them have it's quite big if you think the national average is 19%. And we're aiming for 5%. And then the Qantas spokesperson's explanation is it's not that women are paid less. It says there's a underrepresentation of women in highly paid roles like pilots and engineers across airlines globally. So that's their explanation. And so these are all true and valid. I guess the question is, what do you do to get more women in those roles?
Yeah.
How do you encourage women? How do you make it normalize it as well? How do you change that culture? How do you encourage mentoring? How do you have recruitment initiatives? I guess that's the whole point, right?
Yeah. I mean, it goes way back, doesn't it? It starts from when you were a child. I mean, I remember when I was younger, I really wanted to be a pilot. It's one of the things I really, if anybody asked me for many, many years, it wasn't just a fleeting thing.
Yeah.
It was like, I wanted to be a pilot. But I mean, to be completely honest, I didn't really have the support system in place around me to encourage that. For me, it was just an idea of wanting to do that and wanting to be that.
Yeah.
But, if you've got young girls that want to be engineers and, want to go into tech, and if that's what's, if they have that feeling, that passion, that they want to do that, then it all starts at a young age to encourage that, doesn't it? Rather than, oh, no, you're a girl, that's not an appropriate career for you.
Yeah. I think I've talked about this before. That's why I started an engineering degree initially. It was because my dad said, that's not for girls.
Yeah. I'll show you.
But I didn't like it. There was girls that would love it, and could thrive in it. And actually, you reminded me when we talked to Rennie Chavunga, who's who is a civil engineer, when she was telling us the story of how her dad would take them to the airport and they'd watch the planes and how she really wanted to be a pilot. And she told her dad that, and he really encouraged her. He said, you can be whatever you want to be. You want to be a pilot. And actually she did get a pilot's license, but not to fly commercially, to fly for fun. But it is about the support, about seeing it as a possibility. And that's a whole other cultural thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But
it's good that this data is now being recorded. I mean, like I said before, other countries have been doing this for a number of years. It's good that Australia's kind of caught up with the idea of doing this. And now it's just how companies are going to respond to this data.
Yeah.
Because we're in an article, like you said, with Qantas, that they are acknowledging that there's a gap and that they're looking at how to fix that gap and encourage women into the higher paid roles.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's the worst, it's like some of the worst offenders were banks. 8 banks had a median pay gap of more than 30%. This is Australia. The big 4 banks all paid men significantly more than women. And the worst one was Commonwealth, which was a 30%. And then Westpac was only a 1% less. But the best bank was NAB at 18.8%. So that's the best bank. That's interesting because this has really affected my thinking. Also, looking at supermarkets, like Coles was horrendous. But Woolies was pretty reasonable. Again, down more nearer the average, the national average. But, they talk about the makeup of the workforce, higher numbers and higher numbers of women in lower paid areas of the business, which is what we all really talk about. But there was the thing that I found quite interesting about this article is one of the big factors, and they all talk about this in all the countries, is women taking time out of work after having children and then returning part-time, and how that's more likely for women than men. In fact, it says 30% of women compared to 11% of men. But then if you're a manager, it says only 7% of managers are employed part-time, which means there's a promotion cliff because they're not offering managers part-time work. And obviously managers are getting paid more, usually.
Yeah.
So there's that argument, if you call it an argument. I don't necessarily think it is. But then basically it's complex and there are many factors. So that is one, with the women expecting of themselves or society or culturally or whatever, wanting to take on more of the care, giving domestic rather than pursuing the higher paid work, possibly. But other things include conscious or unconscious discrimination in hiring and pay decisions, which is, we've got plenty of research on that now to show that's impacting it. And then also that women are less likely to negotiate for higher pay or to advocate for themselves or play up their achievements, go through that promotion. All these factors impact this outcome that we have. And then there was wanting to know which one was the one in favor of women, but it was like, the care services in the lowest paid industries with the smallest gaps. So food service industry, public administration, arts and recreation, they have like the lowest being like 2% pay gap, but still in favor of men. 2% still in favor of men. So yeah, what we need is strong commitment from society, government, businesses, community, even education, like, what's possible and what's normal. Anything should be normal. And also support and flexibility in the workplace. And going into schools and recruiting, supporting scholarships. There's so many things you can do. And I was looking at other sources of what there was suggesting the causes of gender pay gap, but the structural factors or, you know, occupational segregation, which is like, you know, mainly construction is men and engineering is men, those kind of things. Yes. That's slowly changing. And the disproportionate responsibility for unpaid caring and women's concentration in low paid, highly feminized sectors. I guess nursing is a highly feminized sector. So those are the kind of things that impact. And I was like, yeah, we know this.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be really cynical, you can almost say that those roles that women have taken on traditionally are being paid less because, I guess, again, also going traditionally in historical terms, men have been in charge of making those decisions about who gets paid what. So we know that carers do, you know, a wonderful job, very important job, and yet they get paid salaries that are on the very low end of the scale, considering the job that they do is, you know, they're taking care of our families and our parents or vulnerable people. It's a very important job, and yet they're not getting paid in terms of the level that relative to the importance that they're, you know, that they're taking on, the responsibilities that they're taking on. Yeah.
It's not even just that. It's like, who decides the value? For me, value is based on the level of knowledge, education, training, and experience requires to do that role. And then also the intangible value of impact on society. So if somebody's not looking after your kids, if your kids aren't in schools, you kind of, you don't be able to work. Yeah. And somebody was saying, because here we don't have this in the UK, but in Australia, when there's road works and things, they have traffic controllers. Whereas in the UK, we have like, I don't know, traffic lights. So they don't have actual people as much controlling traffic when there's roadworks and things happening. They've got usually lights or something, temporary lights and things put in. So when I saw that here, I thought it was really weird. But here, they'll literally pay people to stand in the street, controlling traffic, going directing people around something because there's roadworks. People get paid good money for that. I'm sure they might have to go and do a day's training to do that. But they get paid very well.
Yeah, it's kind of alignment with the skill required and everything else that goes with it. They get paid quite well.
They get paid quite well. Whereas somebody in a daycare looking after young children has to go and do a frigging diploma. You know, has to study and has to learn about
to do that,
working with different types of children and different behaviors and for their early development, and yet gets paid barely a thing. So who decides the value? And that's the other thing that, you know, and mostly women do that. That's what bugs me. Anyhow, so yes.
Good data. I like that article, Tracy, the one that you picked, the Guardian one, because some of the others were, and you didn't really explain the details of it. So that's a good one to read.
Yeah, definitely. But anyway, I mean, I'm for the fight. There's so many factors, not just even being a woman, but, you know, if you're a woman that's Latina or a woman that's Black or a woman that's Asian, there's even more disparities, more and more layers, and it's just really scares me. And you're going to talk about your story because that's what scares me.
Okay, let's move on then. Ready? So this is a story, another one from The Guardian. Look, so it's The Guardian. The writer is a guy called Edward Helmer, and this is a report that the University of Florida has terminated all diversity, equity, and inclusion activities and the associated positions, people that were actually doing that work at the university. And this has been a decision that the University of Florida has made in order to comply with state law passed by Governor Ron DeSantis. I feel like I've heard quite a bit about this guy now, that prohibits public funding of DEI programs. So this is state law, in Florida that was passed in January. And it specifically prohibits the state from using federal funds and taxpayer dollars, essentially, to fund DEI programs. And this decision that the University of Florida has made comes as around 40 other anti-DEI bills have been introduced across the US. So that's over the course of this last year. And I know we've talked about this DEI must die, type of rhetoric that is going around, but this is like what's the real impact that it's having on society and in people in the US specifically. The university, even having made this decision, has also said that it would continue to foster a community of trust and respect for every member of the Gator Nation. So they're referring to their athletic program. And I guess the university has felt that they need to make that statement because they're being forced into doing this as opposed to it being a decision that they've just made, because that's what they wanted to do. So basically, all of this has happened because last year, Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis, signed legislation that banned tax dollars used to promote DEI initiatives. The Florida Board of Education soon followed suit, defining DEI programs as those programs that categorize individuals based on race or sex for the purpose of differential or preferential treatment. The Florida Board of Education said higher education must return to its essential foundations of academic integrity and the pursuit of knowledge instead of being corrupted by destructive ideologies.
What's it destroying? That's what I want to know. What is it destroying?
Destructive ideologies. They're really trying to frame DEI in a very negative light, aren't they? Yeah.
The language.
Florida's Commissioner of Education, Manny Diaz Jr., said the actions, he added, would ensure taxpayer money wouldn't be spent on DEI and radical indoctrination that promotes division in our society. So he's definitely stating his position on all of this, isn't he? Destructive ideologies and radical indoctrination. Governor DeSantis posted his approval of the university's announcement, saying that DEI is toxic and has no place in our public universities. I'm glad that Florida was the first state to eliminate DEI, and I hope more states will follow suit. Wow.
I think others will, because it's never just one, is it? I just think it's very scary that it's calling, we're trying to progress and make society fairer when there's been so many injustices, unfairness, and inequality.
Yeah.
I guess they just want it to go back to that then. And they're not proposing anything else, are they? They're just saying, stop what you're doing because we don't like the effects of it. And they can't actually, I just love to just really get to the bottom of what they feel.
It gets my go, Tracy. What I don't understand is, I don't know how they can say things like DEI is toxic, radical indoctrination.
I don't, because the companies that have, the most successful companies have incorporated that and account for some of their success to the diversity of their, and the cultures that they've built. So where does the evidence suggest that, other than people's opinions because they're uncomfortable?
Even the words diversity, equity, inclusion, how can any of those be considered toxic?
Exactly.
If you're going to assume the policies that have been implemented are representing, those words, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you'd assume that they are, because, a large university, 30,000 students, the University of Florida, or whatever their DEI department was doing, I'm sure there would be strict policies about how they would implement that. It wouldn't just be a free-for-all.
Mm.
So the fact that these, the people in opposition, the Florida's Commission for Education, the governor, DeSantis, the fact that they are framing it in such a negative light, it's just so political.
Yeah, it's
And
definitely
they
a
kind of
strategy.
weaponize the phrase.
They have weaponized it. It's not even logical, but it's not even. It makes no sense whatsoever. And then it might be different if they picked one specific policy that they weren't comfortable with, but they're basically throwing the whole thing in the bin. And more than that, they're making it illegal.
Exactly.
With all the other bills, not just
He
this one.
signed it into law, exactly.
Yeah, making it illegal where we're trying to counteract preferential treatment that's already existed.
Yeah.
So he's either saying that that's not true, that's not, we've always been an equal and fair, or we want it to go back to how it was.
Interestingly enough as well, it's affected other things, as the Education Board has also said that principles of sociology course, whatever that included, could also no longer be taught and would be replaced with a general American history class.
Yeah, this is the problem. This is really a problem. You stop teaching kids about what's happened and, how people have been treated and the reasons and where bias and discrimination comes from. And you stop teaching that. Like we were talking, I don't know, what's the story we were talking about where you're saying people have forgotten and then people are saying things didn't happen. You talk about the Holocaust and things like that. People are actually even questioning whether it actually happened. In denial. And possibly because they're not teaching it. You really see it in a movie or a documentary, which you can put down to fiction, especially when so many other people are putting things out there that contradict that. Well, there's other people that believe the world is flat. Like, and I mean, now to me, what it emphasizes the importance of things like Remembrance Days and Women's Days, and because that's how we remember, how we help people remember, educate new generations, because they're taking it out of schools.
Yeah, I think we said this before, that it seems like when there are discriminatory practices in place that disadvantage the underdog, essentially, and minorities and people who don't have power, then these policies are, these discriminatory policies and acts are allowed to just run wild. But then when there is something that is standing up and fighting for the underdogs of our planet, it's just that they get just binned very quickly. As soon as there's a threat. And it's because, these people that are behind DEI initiatives, I guess they're not the ones in power. They're not the ones with the true power.
No, not at all. Yeah. That's what's scary. When you threaten the power, we threaten the power too much. That's what's happened.
Yeah. But what by making your society better, by making your businesses thrive, how is this a threat? Yeah.
I
don't understand.
Well, this preferential treatment makes it divisive. I'd like to know how, with specific examples and backed up research, but none of that comes out when they're putting a bill for and just do anything with just opinion.
Yeah.
Which is
anyway, I mean, Florida's governor was voted into power by the Floridian people, I guess that's what you'd call them. And that's representing, I guess, what the majority of Florida are wanting from their governor.
Scary. I just hope it doesn't spread. And
I
really hope Trump doesn't get in again. But I can't believe he's not
to be in prison, really. But
not a better contender, because Biden he's just not of the age. He should have retired. He deserves to be retired. and put out to pasture. I
They were
don't
told
understand why they
asleep
haven't
most
got
of the time.
any reasonable candidates there.
Yeah, I mean, there probably are a lot of, very worthy people that support the Democratic Party, but probably not nobody wants to be in that position, being president. I mean, I don't think it's a very nice job, actually. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think it's made out, supposed to be the most powerful man on the planet. But I don't think that's actually the case. But anyhow, as you were saying, hopefully it doesn't spread. I mean, it's likely to spread, but there is a contrast to that story because around about the same time as Florida's signing of that into law, the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, said on Friday she would take, she would take legal action against Long Island's Nassau County if it failed to rescind an executive order restricting transgender women and girls from participating in athletic events. So she's basically standing up against this Long Island, Nassau County that is saying transgender women and girls can't participate in athletic events. Under the executive order, these athletes can only participate based on their sex assigned at birth. And they're saying this, so Nassau County are saying they will continue to fight for females' right to be safe, secure, and have a level playing field to compete. And that's why they're saying they've signed this executive order.
How are you not safe because there's transgender people in your team? That's what interests me. Suggests you're not safe when you say that.
Yeah,
Or safe, what was it? Safe, three things, safe, something, and then level playing field.
Safe, secure, and a level playing field.
All right. So I get the argument's a level playing field. I get that. And, that's debatable. But safe?
Yeah.
They're suggesting that you're not safe if you're in the transgender with an environment.
Transgender women and girls looking to be predatory or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, language is so powerful when people just
absorb
that without even realizing.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah. Without understanding it any further.
It's just,
but it's good that somebody here, the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, she's taking that side to them. So according to her, she's saying that New York human rights law states that the law is perfectly clear. You cannot discriminate against a person because of their gender, identity, or expression. We have no room for hate or bigotry in New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for her.
Good for her. And when we're lucky we've got people that will prepare to fight because it's not an easy thing to do, to stand up for the rights of minorities.
Yeah. And New York is, one of those states that I guess we would consider to be more liberal, open, and progressive. So it's good that they are really standing by their core values.
Yeah.
And taking that side on. But I just thought it really nice to have a look at that contrasting story, that there are people out there in the US that are, still trying to.
I think there always will be. I'm just going to be interesting to see what happens in America over the next few years with the whole DEI and whether it's going to spread. These things tend to spread, especially with social media. These things tend to spread around other countries. So I'd be really interested to know. But maybe, maybe I'm biased because I am a minority. But I don't know. I just feel that it's just an unfair if you're not giving equal opportunities. Simple as that. But I don't think we've got time for another story. So I'm going to move on to the what would you do? Would you do, Lu? What would you do?
These make me nervous, these stories.
Yeah. Well, you feel free to come up with some for me. I'm happy to take some what would you do's. You can think of any. So, what would you do, Lu?
Yeah.
So we have a colleague doing workplace. You're deciding on promoting people, right? And the colleague recommends the man for promotion over a woman. So you've got two, a man and a woman. And this is the rationale for selecting the man. I'm not sure about her long-term commitment. She just got engaged, and I think she wants to have kids soon.
Do you?
What would you do? Is that what you would say?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would be a little bit shocked by that, to be honest with you, because, I mean, it shouldn't even be a consideration. Yeah. So what would I do? I would ask that colleague to have to go back to the decision making again and look at the candidates for what they can contribute, what they can do, what skills they can bring, what experience they have, as opposed to making assumptions about what their life plans might be. Because I could equally say that the other person, the guy, well, he's maybe jumped around jobs a little bit. Maybe he's stayed here 6 months and all that training, all that onboarding and everything. And then we can't assume what's going to happen in the future. But and it can only go on what's presented to us in terms of their skills and everything that I said before. And whether that's the right fit and right candidate for our team and for what we're trying to achieve. But yeah, I mean, I think I would be a little bit shocked, to be honest with you. I don't exactly know how I would approach it with that person apart from in a practical way. Okay, let's just have a look again, because I don't want to make a decision based on assumptions about, what a person might or might do in terms of their personal life and their personal decisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would be a little bit shocked. I mean, obviously I'm a female as well. I'm a female without, that's been married, that's gotten married, without children. I'd be a little bit affronted by all that. Plus, there is the fact as well that even if that person were to go ahead and have a family and have children, that's not going, even if that's going to put some disruption in terms of the gaps of work, it's still, it's part of our society. It's just how things are. We have to manage those situations, and we do. Plenty of businesses manage that. There's plenty of women that have very successful careers and have children and lots of other things going on in their lives and their personal lives. So, yeah, it's just not an acceptable reason. But I would be a bit shocked. I'm not exactly sure how I would,
Right. I'm going to be biased and say something I would potentially expect somebody older to say, an older generation to say something like that. Well, as opposed to somebody younger, I hope. I don't know for sure. Because, we live in a society where, one, we need to grow the population for us to continue as a race and, fill jobs in the economy. And two, only women can actually physically have them. But also, if they'll look at the partners, and it might be partners says, we can't assume that the woman will take lots of time off. And even if she does, so what? We have to manage it. We have to be flexible, because that's the world we live in, like what you said. So, yeah, it's easy to say I'd say that, but it really depends on my relationship with this colleague. Are they my boss? Are they my peer? Who is this person I'm having this conversation with? Will dictate how direct I am about it.
It would certainly leave me feeling like, okay, I learned a little bit about you then.
Yeah.
I'd be a little bit more cautious around that person in future. But you're right. It depends on the dynamic. I suppose that, like I said, that would be the only way. I think I honestly would be able to approach it is to go back to practical terms. Okay, well, I'm not comfortable making a decision based on that criteria. And let's have a look at, let's go back and just reevaluate again.
Yeah.
The decision.
And anyway, this is what it says. When co-workers make assumptions about a woman's commitment to work based on what's happening in her personal life, it unfairly limits her opportunities and could cause your company to miss out on a highly committed candidate. It's also illegal in many countries, including Australia, to consider a person's marital or parental status as a factor in promotions. So it's illegal. So you could say that because that's a fact. Because well, it's actually illegal to take that into consideration.
And you've seen, like, in our industry where we've worked, Tracy, I mean, mostly it's female-dominated industry. Many of the women we worked with had families and lots of other commitments, you know, whether it was like personal hobbies or sports or whatever it was. And they were very committed individuals that, you know, performed a demanding job, but still did it regardless of everything else that was going on in their lives. So, yeah, I mean, from the experience that we come from, we can see that it's truly achievable to have a successful career and balance that with what else, you know, whatever else is going on in your life. If you as an individual want to make that happen. Yeah.
But the other thing, funny thing about this is I got this example's source is from the Lean In organization. And if you think that they did a heap of research of all these companies and they're getting typical examples from America, it's the US really mostly. It scares me to think, I mean, it's probably how old is the data? You know, 2016 to 2020 kind of data. It's scary, but I'm expecting older generation. But I mean, I actually do have a memory of somebody I know, a woman, making a comment about hiring someone who had just got engaged and was going to have a family, or like a comment that, you know, suggested this kind of what you call maternal bias. I have heard that, but it wasn't somebody I worked with personally or worked, you know, had anything to do with making decisions about who I work with or who I employ. So it is an attitude I'm aware of, but I expect it in the older and maybe newer generations that won't think like that. We hope.
We hope, yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It says here, what you could do as well is suggest to your colleague that women should decide for themselves whether or not they want to take on the new challenges at work. And then it says, if you're feeling bold, you can also point out the double standard. It's hard to imagine that we'd say that about a man who recently got engaged.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you need to be employing people that you feel have got the integrity and commitment to that job, regardless of, like I said, what's happening in their personal lives, because everybody behaves differently. You know, like some person might, you know, one little thing in their life and that throws everything off. Whereas other people might be able to juggle 20 things and, you know, still power ahead and forge a successful career. So
you've got to go with what's happening now. Is that person in the best place? Have they got the spirit, passion, the drive? Do they really want it?
Yeah.
You know, like the potential.
The spirit. I like that word, Tracy. That's a good one. The spirit.
You know, but you got to go off that now, because a man can have any situation in his life that affects his work. So can women, and that idea. And it says why it happens. So when a woman becomes a mother, it can make others think she's less committed to her career, even less competent. And that's like, you know, that's evidence-based research. And as a result, she's often held to higher standards and offered fewer opportunities. And it's seeing a gap in, oh no, I'm looking at the wrong one. Experience maternal bias, which I've talked about. So people unconsciously or consciously start to question their competence and commitment based on the mistaken belief that women can't be fully present at work if they have family responsibilities at home, rooted in maternal bias. And I'll contradict that a little bit by saying, you know, we have friends that have children and they retire and sleepless nights. And that is a reality. Maybe not.
The men also that are in relationships, they're still going to have sleepless nights as well. You know,
they experience the same thing. So it's not isolated. No. So that was the next thing I was going to say. So I wouldn't say that children does not necessarily impact you and your ability to do your work. I'd say that's just life.
Yeah.
And you get support, and it doesn't just impact the women, mothers, it impacts the fathers as well.
Yeah. Good one. Yeah. It's a good one, Tracy. Yeah, because I would agree with you that it is probably something that, is still happening. And I have heard, like you said, you've heard somebody say, I think I've heard it in jest, you know, people say it in jest. But, you know, even in jest, it's coming from a place, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to be wary. And some people don't even realize. Some people will say that innocently, not know that that's a problem to think that way. They won't even understand. And that's why BEI is so important, to help educate people about our blind spots. Because we don't know that, you don't know what's there in that blind spot.
Yeah.
And we all have them. Everybody has them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why I like doing this chat with you, because it keeps me on track, going in the right direction. Still so much more to learn, understand, and empathize with. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Lu.
Okay, good. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you. It was very interesting and informative. A lot of information. Informative episode. So thank you for joining me on today's stories.
Yeah. See you next time, Tracy.
See you
Bye.
next time. Bye.
Bye.